Check that you have all your patterns, your front, collar stand, collar, back and pocket, front and back skirt. Sew up all the darts on the front top, front and back skirt panels. Sew the back top panels together at the sides with a 1 cm seam allowance. Grab a pair of scissors and trim away the seam allowances to reduce the tension. Then turn it inside out and iron well. Top stitch along the sides. Repeat this for the other 2 back panels. For the front top, we're going to fold in the armhole with 1 cm and then top stitch with a 0.8 cm seam allowance from the folded edge. Following the position of the notch on the skirt panel, sew the pocket to the skirt with a 1 cm seam allowance. Understitch on only the front pocket panels. Sew the top and the skirt of the front panels together at the waist with a 1 cm seam allowance. Overlock the seam. Following the notches on the center front, double fold the fabric to get a placket. Top stitch the placket down by sewing very close to the inside folded edge. On the back skirt panel, you'll find a diagonal line. At the diagonal line, you're going to fold it in with a 1 cm and then top stitch it down with a 0.8 cm seam allowance. Sew the back top and back skirt together at the waist with a 1 cm seam allowance. Sew the back skirt panels together. First, mark out the seam allowance at the corner. Then sew a line down with a 1 cm seam allowance, stopping exactly at the intersection. Grab a pair of scissors and trim into the corner to reduce tension. Spread open the seam allowances and iron. Then fold the fabric this way . The fabric below will be protruding out by 1 centimeter. Fabric will be aligned on the right, iron well, and sew it down. Overlap the back top panels by 1 centimeter and then baste them down. Match up the center of the collar stand and the center of the top back panels together and baste them down with a 0.5 cm seam allowance. Mark the sewing line of 1 cm on the collar stand panel. Then baste the collar stand with the front top panels together starting from the 1 cm marking. Baste with a 0.5 cm seam allowance. Taking the other collar stand, we're going to sandwich the top panels in between. Sew them together with a 1 cm seam allowance. Flip up the collar stand panels and sew the collar to the collar stand panel with a 1 cm seam allowance. Now we want to sew the collar stand panels together as well as the collar panels together. So we're going to gently twist away the front panels. Then fold down the collar stand and the collar panels. We're going to sew them together with a 1 cm seam allowance, being very careful not to sew onto the front top panels. Repeat this on the other side, making sure that all the front panels will be pushed towards the middle opening. Grab a pair of scissors and trim away the seam allowances to reduce the tension and bulk. Turn it inside out. Push out the corners so they are nice and sharp. Then fold in the seam allowances of 1 cm at the opening. Iron well. Then top stitch with a 0.5 cm seam allowances on the collar stand and collar. Sew the front and back panels together at the side seam with a 1 cm seam allowance. Fold up the hem by 5 cm, iron, and then sew it down with a 4 cm seam allowance from the folded edge.